After Oliver and I got married, we lived our lives separately, until one day, he brought home a pregnant woman, and I brought home a 5-year-old boy, Ollie. This is my son, who was lost out in the world. He's still young and needs his mom, I said softly, caressing the boy's face, which bore a 7 or 8-point resemblance to mine. The fragile and innocent expression on the woman behind Oliver froze instantly. Oliver's face turned dark. Chapter 1. I was about to make century egg and pork congee for the son I had just picked up from a bar when the doorbell rang. Holding a spatula and wearing an apron, I opened the door with a frown. Who the hell? Standing there was Oliver, looking at me with utter disgust, his arm around a woman with snow-white skin and delicate features. Her belly had a slight curve. Her gaze, as it swept over me, carried thinly veiled contempt and smugness. I paused for a moment and finally spat out a word. Fuck. Oliver's tone was ice-cold. Jessica, mind your language. I pointed at her and feigned ignorance. What's this about? Oliver lowered his lashes and calmly said, she's pregnant with my child. I can't let her and the baby suffer. I almost laughed out of sheer anger. Once, I had loved him deeply. Now, I hated him just as much. I hated the young love we shared, his tenderness and romantic gestures, the promises of I will never let you down, and the way he shattered it all into illusions within a few short years. I still remember the time he came home with lipstick smudged on his neck and collar. He didn't even bother hiding it anymore, openly flaunting it in front of me. When I confronted him, screaming at the top of my lungs, he tugged at his tie, bored and irritated. Jessica, can you stop being so unreasonable? A man has to entertain for business, instead of being a supportive wife. You're here making things difficult for me. Look at yourself. Do you even resemble the once dignified eldest daughter of the Bai family? Later, when I went to fetch him from a private room, I found him holding a young, beautiful woman. In the interplay of light and shadow, the tender, doting gaze I thought was mine alone had long been given to someone else. Jessica, let's just live our own lives. You can call for male models or whatever you want. I won't interfere. But at the same time, don't interfere with me either. Rest assured, you'll always be Mrs. Ma, the wife of the family head. None of the outside women will ever come into the house or threaten your position. But now, one casual sentence, she's pregnant, and I don't want them to suffer. He grandly brought her to me, standing on the moral high ground. A man's promises are worth less than a dime. I thought my heart would still ache after all this time. After all, I had loved him so much. Yet now, to my surprise, I felt nothing but calm. The woman spoke in a soft voice. Miss Bai, Mr. Ma didn't mean for this to happen. But a child needs their father. You're so generous. Surely you won't mind me and the baby. Mr. Ma and I are truly in love. As she spoke, tears began to fall. What a delicate, swaying little white lotus. Oliver fell for it. Of course. His eyes filled with disgust as he looked at me, warning condescendingly, Jessica, whether you accept this or not, Alicia is a kind-hearted girl. Don't you dare bully her. I stared at him and said, are you fucking insane? Chapter 2. Mommy? A crisp, tender voice sounded from behind the sofa. A moment later, a cute and handsome little boy peeked out. He looked about 7 or 8 points similar to me. It was only then that I remembered something I had completely forgotten. All my sorrow and indignation evaporated as I rushed into the kitchen. Because, shit, my congee! But it was too late. The congee was thoroughly burnt. Ah! Just then, I felt a small tug on my finger. Mommy, it's okay. I'm not that hungry yet, the little boy said, his big watery eyes gazing up at me as he tried to comfort me. With his delicate little face, rosy lips, and soft, chubby hands lightly gripping my finger, my heart melted. I crouched down and planted a big kiss on his cheek. No matter what, my little sweetheart can't go hungry. Mommy will make more. Mommy's century egg and pork congee is the best, I reassured him. At that moment, the despicable couple behind me were completely forgotten. My heart and mind were entirely occupied by this adorable son. Meanwhile, an ominous feeling crept over Oliver. We'd been married for 9 years. In those 9 years, how could he not know whether I'd ever been pregnant? Oliver's voice trembled as he asked, Jessica, who is he? It was then that I realized they were still standing there, lazily lifting my eyes to meet his. I replied, Ollie, this is my son, who was lost out in the world. As you can see, he's still very young. He can't be without his mommy. The fragile, innocent expression on the woman behind Oliver froze instantly. Oliver's face darkened. He exploded with fury. Jessica! His eyes turned bloodshot, his entire being exuding an intense, menacing aura. It seemed he couldn't accept this turn of events, as if he could spend all his time indulging outside. But the moment I cheated, it became unbearable for him. The little boy pouted and frowned. Uncle, why are you so mean? Then, with a sweet, clear smile, he opened his arms and hugged me. Not like me. I only care about mommy. Chapter 3. My heart skipped a beat and then started pounding like a drum. So adorable! How can this little mouth be so sweet? I wanted to smother him in kisses right then and there, suppressing my urge to pinch his cheeks. I reminded myself there were still 2 pieces of trash to deal with, gently covering the boy's ears. I shot Oliver a mocking glance. What are you so angry about? Isn't this exactly what you said, minding our own business? The veins on Oliver's temple twitched, and his teeth ground audibly. He struggled to contain his emotions, glaring coldly at me while his voice burned with rage. Fine. Have your fun. But who the hell gave you permission to have another man's child? Oh, I retorted with a cold laugh. Oliver, you knocked someone up and brought her here, saying you couldn't let her or the baby suffer. But I can't have someone else's child? Do you think you have the right to say that? My sneer deepened. Oliver, don't be such a hypocrite. Oliver's breathing grew heavy, but suddenly he seemed to have figured something out. A sneer spread across his face. Jessica, don't tell me you're jealous. You just grabbed some kid from your relatives to mess with me, didn't you? That whole playing hard to get act doesn't work on me anymore. I couldn't believe it. How did the clean-cut, handsome boy I once loved turn into this greasy, self-centered jerk? Was I blind, or was I just a fool back then? He looked down at me and barked, Jessica, get rid of this little bastard right now. I'll let this slide if you do. Slap! In his shocked silence, I shook my stinging hand. I didn't want to resort to violence in front of the boy, but the word bastard made my blood boil, and I couldn't hold back. Mr. Ma, Alicia gasped, glaring at me with indignation. Jessica, how dare you treat Mr. Ma like that? Slap! Right in front of Oliver. I delivered a slap to Alicia too. She was stunned. You actually hit me. Alicia lunged at me in a fury, ready to retaliate. I raised my foot calmly. Oh, don't care about the baby in your belly anymore? She instinctively shielded her stomach and turned pleading eyes to Oliver. Miss Bai, you can both get out now. I interrupted, impatiently cutting off her dramatic performance. Turning to Oliver with icy disdain, I said, you cheated. I cheated. You're about to have your child, and I already have mine. That makes us even. As I spoke, I pulled out a paternity test report and tossed it at his face to shut down any delusion that I was bluffing. I sneered. He is my son. Biologically, I am his mother. The word supports the conclusion that Jessica is the biological mother of Colin on the report stabbed at Oliver's pride. Seen enough? I scoffed. If so, leave, right now. Don't waste my time. I have congee to cook for my son. Oliver stared at me in silence, his gaze fixed on mine as if trying to find even a shred of the love, anger, or despair I once felt for him. Anything, even hatred. Something to prove that I still cared. But this time, he failed. I had screamed, smashed plates, and hurled the cruelest words at him in our past fights. I had swallowed my pride as the eldest daughter of the Bai family to beg him with tearful eyes. I had even cursed him like a fishwife, pointing my finger in his face. But when love dies, all that remains is bitterness and ruins. I used to wonder why 2 people who loved each other so deeply could end up like this. I don't wonder anymore. My love for him was once a blazing fire. He doused it, bit by bit, yet the embers still hoped he might come back. But he scoffed at them. In the end, I extinguished it myself, even if it bled me dry, even if it tore me apart. Now all that's left is peace, the kind that comes with ashes. Oliver's glare darkened as he rasped, "Jessica, are you serious?" Suddenly, he lost control, ignoring Alicia and Colin's presence. He grabbed my wrist, squeezing so hard it felt like he was about to break it. His face was a storm of fury and danger, like a turbulent sea. "Who gave you permission to take this seriously?" Alicia froze, looking at Oliver with fear and uncertainty. His reaction was nothing like someone who had no feelings left for Jessica. Quite the opposite, he clearly still cared about her. I had had enough. My free hand lashed out, landing a stinging slap on his other cheek. "Are you out of your goddamn mind?" I snarled, yanking my hand free and rubbing the red marks he'd left on my wrist. My anger was laced with disdain. "Who gave me permission?" "I did." "Who the hell do you think you are? You rotten cucumber? A pile of stinking garbage trying to pull off some disgusting forced love trope like in those novels? Ugh, you're revolting." Furious, I let loose a torrent of curses. Chapter 4. Oliver glowered at me for a while before finally leaving the kitchen with Alicia in tow. I stared coldly at their retreating figures. "Mommy?" The child tugged cautiously at my sleeve. "It's okay." I patted his head gently. "Were you scared?" The little boy shook his head and replied in his soft, sweet voice, "I wasn't scared at all. Mommy was so cool." I couldn't help but laugh, my irritation melting away as I went back to cooking. Once the congee was ready, I watched Colin devour it like a little tornado. "Eat slowly, don't rush," I reminded him with a smile. "Mommy, it's so yummy." His face was full of satisfaction, but he still looked like he could eat more. For a moment, I zoned out. It was ironic, really, as the pampered eldest daughter of the Bai family. I hadn't even known how to cook instant noodles. This culinary skill of mine had been developed entirely for Oliver's sake. What a fool I had been, completely blinded by love. I thought love could conquer everything. Turns out, that was just my own delusion. Shaking off the swirling thoughts, I finally asked, "Colin, who is your biological father?" Don't let my tough act in front of Oliver fool you. I was as confused as anyone. Sure, Oliver and I had been married for 9 years, but I was 100% certain that I hadn't been pregnant in all that time. And yet, the boy in front of me had a 99% DNA match with me and bore an uncanny resemblance. There was no denying that he was my son. The only possible anomaly? Over 5 years ago, I'd mysteriously fallen unconscious for 3 days. At the time, my relationship with Oliver was already in shambles, so he couldn't have cared less. He probably assumed it was just another one of my desperate attempts to keep him around. I'd wondered what might have happened during those 3 days. But getting pregnant and giving birth in just 3 days? That was beyond absurd. Colin's cheerful expression faltered for a moment. Pressing his lips together, he dropped his soft, cutesy demeanor, his gaze suddenly clear and mature. He spoke carefully. "Mommy, what if I told you I don't want you to meet my father?" I chuckled, pinching his chubby cheek. "Colin, most kids would jump at the chance to reunite their parents or push for a perfect family. Even if that's not possible, they'd at least try to set them up." "Why are you so different?" In a soft voice, Colin answered, "If my father were someone worthy of a lifetime commitment, I wouldn't object. Whether or not he can win Mommy's heart depends on his own abilities. And I won't interfere. I just don't want you to give up your dreams because of me." His voice grew steady, almost solemn. "Colin only wants to be Mommy's armor, not her weakness. Mommy, you are yourself first, before you are a wife or a mother." His serious expression left me dumbfounded. "Seriously, kid, how do you even think like this? Are you really 5 years old?" I couldn't ignore the feeling that Colin didn't like his father much. In fact, there seemed to be a faint trace of disdain. With me, it was all Mommy in his sweet voice, but when referring to his father, he used the distant and formal father. A faint glimmer of tears appeared in Colin's eyes, though it was unclear whether they came from relief or sadness. "Besides," he added softly, "my father was never the right person for Mommy." I hadn't yet processed the meaning of his words when I felt a cool touch on my wrist. Carefully, Colin was applying ointment to the red marks Oliver had left on my wrist. He blew softly on the area as he worked, whispering, "Pain, pain, go away." Ah, how could I have such an adorable, thoughtful son? Chapter 5. Colin officially moved in. That night, holding his pillow, he hesitantly asked, "Mommy, can I sleep with you tonight?" "I don't agree," Oliver barked sharply, glaring at Colin with bloodshot eyes, like a beast guarding its territory. I scoffed. "Do I look like I care whether you agree?" Once upon a time, I had raged at him like this too, forbidding him from spending the night with other women. But it hadn't worked. He continued to do as he pleased. And now, sleeping with my son was somehow crossing a line? What could he do if I brought home a male model for some fun? The bullets he fired years ago had come back to hit him squarely in the forehead. Colin, however, looked as though he were frightened. His bright red cheeks shimmered with tears as he looked at Oliver. "Uncle, I haven't seen my mommy in so long. I just want to spend some time with her." "Is that so wrong?" His voice trembled, soft and sweet, tinged with a sob. His delicate, fair face was an 8-point match to mine. "If I've overstepped, Mommy, I'll just..." He trailed off. "My features are bold and striking, a face that carries an innate intensity even when softened." Yet seeing this pitiful expression on a face so similar to mine somehow didn't seem out of place. It was devastatingly endearing. I immediately scooped him up, soothing him gently. "Don't listen to him. Nobody bullies my son." With a disdainful glance at Oliver, I added, "Didn't you say we'd live our own lives? Now your interference is a bit much, don't you think? I sleep with my son. You sleep with your little girlfriend. Fair, isn't it? And look at you, scowling like a demon. Have you no dignity left as the eldest son of the Ma family? Stop being so unreasonable." My tone was dripping with contempt. Oliver was stunned. The words "live our own lives" had been his idea. The rule "no interference" was also his idea. And now, the one unable to accept me cheating and showing up with a child was, unsurprisingly, also him. This level of hypocrisy was genuinely eye-opening. I used to never tire of looking at him. Now, I couldn't stand the sight of him. With Colin in my arms, I headed for the bedroom without a backward glance, which meant I missed it entirely. The teary, pitiful expression on Colin's face vanished the moment I turned. He cast a sly, provocative glance at Oliver, his lips curling as he slowly mouthed a single word. "Idiot." Oliver's face turned a deep shade of green. Chapter 6. The next afternoon, the housekeeper prepared lunch. Oliver, ever so attentive, helped Alicia to her seat and served her food with all the gentle care in the world, as though yesterday's fit of rage had never happened. If I had bothered to glance up, I might have thought bitterly, "He used to treat me like this too." But I had no time to pay them any mind. I was busy negotiating with my son. "Mommy, I want KFC," Colin said earnestly. I replied firmly, "Colin, eating too much fast food will turn you into a little chubby boy. Fried chicken, soda, burgers, they're all unhealthy." Colin pouted, trying to sway me. "Mommy, we won't eat much. Just imagine, after we leave the amusement park, crispy fried chicken with pepper sauce, paired with ice-cold lemon soda, and crunchy chicken drumsticks." My resolve crumbled, slapping my thigh. I relented. "Fine. We'll go this weekend." Ahem. "Don't judge me. I've been craving KFC too." Colin gave me a big kiss on the cheek, his smile lighting up his entire face. "Mommy, you're the best mommy in the whole wide world." Across the table, Oliver's simmering anger rose as I continued to ignore him. His previously soft gestures turned stiff and careless. "Ollie, I don't like celery," Alicia murmured, glancing at him. But Oliver didn't even respond. His eyes were fixed on me and Colin, who were happily chatting and laughing. His dark gaze grew deeper, veins bulging on the back of his hand as though he were about to snap the chopsticks in half. Noticing this, I smirked inwardly. Men are so pathetic. When I gave him my burning love, he discarded it like trash. But the moment I stopped caring, the moment I looked at him with disdain, he began testing the waters, even groveling like a lapdog. Does he think a woman who's truly moved on would ever look back? Chapter 7. Colin's biological father? He refused to talk about it, and I didn't press him. The Bai family is a wealthy and powerful household. Raising one child, or even 10, wouldn't be an issue. As their only daughter, my parents doted on me endlessly. When I married Oliver, they didn't object. Back then, Oliver hadn't changed. He treated me like a treasure. Though he wasn't skilled at needlework, he stubbornly insisted on knitting me a scarf himself. The stitches were uneven, the pattern laughably plain. When I teasingly said it was ugly, his gaze dimmed, but his resolve didn't waver. I'll practice and make the most beautiful warm scarf for my Jessica. Laughing, I threw my arms around his neck and told him I was joking, that I loved it. His eyes sparkled like stars as he leaned down to kiss mine. I have poor circulation and often suffer from cold hands and feet in winter. He'd hold my ice-cold hands in his warm palms, smiling indulgently. I'll keep Jessica's hands warm for a lifetime. When some thugs harassed me, he appeared like a god, beating them to a pulp, draping his black coat over my shoulders. The faint scent of mint brought tears to my eyes. Oliver. I was so scared. He clumsily wiped my tears, leaving my face red and raw. Don't cry. I've chased them off. Jessica, I'll protect you for the rest of my life. Even my father, a shrewd businessman who could see through anyone, believed in Oliver's sincerity toward his daughter back then. How could I, hopelessly caught in his gentle embrace, not believe? When I found out he had cheated, my world shattered. I stood in a mall, holding a black shirt I had carefully chosen for him. My phone displayed pictures of him holding hands and kissing another woman. The mall speakers played a melancholy song. Actually, I understand / I don't understand / the ending was separation / I didn't want separation / I'm still foolishly holding my phone. Waiting / hoping to move on / unable to move on / love or being loved / neither is an exception. Tears blurred the screen as they dripped onto my phone. I looked up, dazed. The song continued. Your clothes are still on the balcony / maybe I've never seen that. See you talked about / maybe the love you mentioned was fake and didn't exist / I don't know what's wrong with me. I'm still hoping for a future with you. It hit me like a bolt of clarity. I wiped my tears and stared at the screen. It couldn't be true. It just couldn't. He loved me so much. He'd never betray me. It had to be a mistake. How could you forget you said you loved me first? / the music box you gave me is still in the drawer / is all my happiness taken away with you? / or am I just used to living this lonely life? I wiped my screen clean, only to reopen the photo and be met again with the image of him kissing someone else, mocking my naivety. It turns out, hearts do change. Chapter 8. When my father found out Oliver had cheated, he was livid. He personally went to confront Oliver and broke 2 of his ribs. Then, he demanded I divorce him immediately. I cried for a full day and night, refusing to let go. People called me a simp, dramatic, a love-struck fool. They said, he's a scumbag. Just leave him already. What's there to cry about? But the pain wasn't theirs to bear. How could they understand? I had loved him for over a decade, from high school to college to marriage. How many decades does a person have in a lifetime? I had poured my most fervent feelings and my brightest youth into nurturing the tree called love. It had rooted itself deeply in my heart. To sever it would be like tearing my heart out. How could I just let it go? Divorce. Letting another woman take my place. Allowing her to reap the benefits of my efforts? Not a chance. If Colin hadn't appeared, even if Oliver flaunted a pregnant Alicia in front of me, I wouldn't have considered divorce. By then, it wasn't about love anymore. As long as I remained Mrs. Ma, they'd never be able to parade their affair openly. Chapter 9. I took Colin back to the Bai family home. My parents were stunned. Hello, Grandpa. Hello, Grandma. Colin greeted them sweetly. My father blinked in disbelief before snapping back to reality. Sweetheart, is this your son? My grandson? I nodded. His name is Colin. My mother frowned slightly. He has your last name. Bai, not Ma? Wait, when did you have a child? When had their daughter been pregnant? How did they not know? I scratched my head awkwardly. Honestly, I don't know either. My father's expression darkened. So, he's not that bastard Oliver's kid? A cold sweat broke out on my forehead. No, he's not. Just to be sure, I had taken Oliver's hair a few days ago and run a paternity test with Colin. The results confirmed there was no biological relationship between them. However, I was biologically Colin's mother. My father clapped me on the shoulder, his face lighting up with excitement. You finally one-upped that scumbag. Well done. Without missing a beat, My parents welcomed Colin with open arms. My father immediately ordered the housekeeper to purchase a full wardrobe of seasonal children's clothes and other necessities. While my mother began converting a spare bedroom into a kid's room, I explained Colin's backstory to them. I had gone to a bar, mustering the courage to hire a male escort for the first time. Instead, a little boy had suddenly hugged my leg and called me mommy. I could still remember the stunned faces of the escorts at the bar, and the odd looks from the other patrons. No surprise, Colin looked so much like me it was uncanny, as if we'd been cut from the same mold. I pulled out the paternity test and shrugged sheepishly. It's a miracle, really. I suddenly became a mom pain-free and gained an adorable little dumpling for free. My parents fell silent. Finally, my father said, "So, you don't know who his father is either?" I pressed my lips together. Exactly. You both know I was never pregnant. I have no idea where he came from, let alone his father. Waving dismissively, my father said, "Forget the father. Just keep the kid. If someone shows up claiming him, we'll pay them off." Colin and I stayed at the By family home for several days. I had no desire to return. Just seeing Oliver's stormy face, acting like I was the one who betrayed him, made me want to throw up. Chapter 10. I couldn't resist asking Colin again about his origins. Previously, Colin had dodged the topic, but this time, he didn't change the subject. "Mommy," he asked seriously, "do you believe in parallel worlds?" "I didn't before," I replied, "but now I do." I couldn't help ruffling his hair. How else could this little guy have come into existence? Colin ducked away, carefully smoothing his messy hair. "Mommy, if I told you that the you in this world crossed over into another parallel world's you, would you believe me?" It should have been a soul transfer, leaving the you in this world unconscious for a while. I frowned in thought. Now that you mention it, I was unconscious for 3 days back then. Oliver hadn't cared, but my parents had been deeply worried. Colin continued, hitting the nail on the head. "Mommy, during those 3 days, you were likely in the parallel world. The reason you don't remember me is probably because you lost your memory when you returned. According to my father, you carried this world's memories when you crossed over. He once investigated and noted that when you married him, your personality was slightly different from before." I was stunned. "Wait, I married your dad?" Colin nodded slightly. "How fascinating. In my world, Mommy and Uncle Ma were strangers." He added, "That actually made sense. I met Oliver after transferring to a new high school. If the parallel world version of me never transferred, we'd have never crossed paths. It was a living, breathing world with real people, and even the smallest changes could lead to vastly different outcomes. The same person could make different choices, branching off into entirely unique paths. Still, I couldn't wrap my head around one thing: if I carried my memories of this world when I crossed over, how could I, having experienced the highs and lows of love and betrayal, fall for someone else and even have a child so quickly? How did that happen? I asked Colin, "Baby, what kind of person is your father?" Colin hesitated for a moment before replying, "Arrogant, domineering, cold, and heartless." That was the complete opposite of Oliver. Tentatively, I asked, "Did I fall in love with him?" For the first time, I saw an unfamiliar expression on Colin's face. His delicate features lost their usual softness, his eyes gathering a storm as his voice turned icy. "Him? Worthy of your love? Great. If he could make my generally sweet-natured son this upset, I must have encountered another scumbag." Colin took a deep breath. "Mommy, men are all trash." I chuckled. "Colin, you can't generalize like that. You're a boy too. Aren't you a sweet and kind little treasure?" Colin puffed up his cheeks, clearly unsatisfied. "I'm not a man. I'm a boy." I laughed out loud. How could my son be this adorable? "What's your father's name?" I asked. Thinking for a moment, I realized that if we were talking about someone in my social circle in this parallel world, they'd likely be someone of similar standing. Among the successful men in the capital with the surname He, there was only one name that fit. Eric He, Colin said softly. "Eric? In this world, Eric and I were as distant as parallel lines, no connection whatsoever." Colin's tone grew serious. "Mommy, it's better for you to recover your memories on your own. If I tell you, My personal feelings might bias your perception of my father. And, well, I really dislike him. His voice softened. Mommy, no matter what choice you make after regaining your memories, I'll support you. I couldn't help but twitch my lips. Little one, are you really only 5 years old? No way. How could a 5-year-old have such mature, rational thoughts? Yet his usual adorable, childish demeanor was undeniably that of a 5-year-old. I was utterly baffled. This kid's personality was way too split. Colin smiled. Mommy, however old you think I am, that's how old I'll be. If you don't want to see me as your son, we can just be friends. You little rascal, I grumbled. Mommy, Colin said softly, you should be prepared. I can feel it. My father will soon arrive in this world too. Chapter 11. Speak of the devil, and he appears. I stared blankly at the invitation in my hand, flipping it over repeatedly. The He family, renowned for their low profile, was suddenly hosting a grand banquet for all the elite families? I was still carrying the title of Mrs. Ma. Normally, the invitation should have gone to Oliver. What was the point of sending one directly to me? If they had no ulterior motives, I wouldn't believe it. Colin glared at the invitation, clearly annoyed. Shameless. His expression darkened further as a thought struck him. Mommy, if you attend the banquet, do you have to go with that? Uncle Ma? I shrugged helplessly. Yep, we're still married. That settled it. I needed to get divorced as soon as possible. Before, I didn't care about staying married. It was just a way to spite Oliver and his mistress. But now things were different. With Colin here, even if he was a legitimate child in another world, in this one, he was technically my illegitimate son, once divorced. I could bring him back to the Bai family. Illegitimate son? So what? Under the Bai family's protection, who would dare gossip? And if I had to hear Oliver call him a little bastard one more time, I might lose my mind. Divorce. Immediately. No delays. Chapter 12. Oliver and I attended the banquet together, seeing Alicia, still living under Ma's roof, glaring at me with jealousy and resentment. I couldn't help but sneer. Oliver truly was a piece of work, stringing along his mistress while still pretending to care about me. Entering the grand hall, I adjusted my posture. No matter how much discord we had in private, in public, appearances had to be kept up. Curiosity about Colin's biological father lingered in the back of my mind. And then, I saw him, a man surrounded by admirers. Tall and imposing, he wore a charcoal gray suit. From the side, I could only make out his sharp profile, a high-bridged nose, thin lips, and well-defined features. I could already imagine how striking his full face must be. His aura screamed arrogant, domineering, and cold, exactly as Colin had described. And I knew instantly, he wasn't my type. I preferred the warmth and youthful energy of a younger Oliver, the confidence, the boldness, the fiery passion. Eric, on the other hand, was calculating, reserved, and impenetrable. Sipping my wine, I let my thoughts drift. Then, as though sensing my gaze, the man turned toward me just as I looked up. For a moment, our eyes locked, and my mind exploded. A flood of memories surged through my consciousness, chaotic and overwhelming. Darkness clouded my vision, and I nearly lost my balance. Oliver noticed something was wrong and hurried to steady me. As the memories settled, I looked into Oliver's eyes and saw a flicker of concern flash across them. I coldly scoffed, yanking my arm free without a care for the stares around us. Perfect. Just perfect. What cosmic crime had I committed in my past life to be stuck with not one, but two garbage men? I had already made peace with the fact that I no longer loved Oliver, but seeing these two standing in the same room, competing in a contest of who could disgust me more, almost made me throw up last night's dinner. One betrayed me, the other used me. My entire body trembled with rage, and just as Eric started walking toward me, oblivious to my fury, I lost it. He looked at me with a mixture of guilt, pain, and cautious affection. I knew this wasn't the Eric of this world, it was the Eric from the parallel world. Affection? This scumbag thinks he's worthy of talking about love? I took a deep breath, trying to calm down, but I couldn't. Not with that face in front of me. I slapped him, hard, The impact sent his head snapping to the side. Gasps filled the room as I spoke. My voice ice cold. Long time no see, Eric. Oliver frowned. Confused. Jessica, you know him? Slap. I turned and slapped Oliver just as firmly, following up with a sharp kick that sent him stumbling back. Shut up. No one asked for your input, Oliver. Chapter 13. I've come to accept that I wasn't born to be a novel's protagonist. In other stories, the scumbag male lead gets dumped, and a tender second male lead comes in to heal the heroine's wounds. The story ends in a blissful happily ever after. Me? It feels like the universe has a personal vendetta against me. When they say God closes a door, he opens a window. They must have forgotten to add that sometimes he welds the window shut for good measure. I had just come to terms with Oliver's infidelity when I ended up in a parallel world, only to find that the Bai family there was on the brink of bankruptcy. In my world, the Bai family was thriving. My father once told my mother how relieved he was to have missed a disastrous investment project. If we had gone for it, it would have been the end of us. But in the parallel world, he didn't miss it. The project tanked, leaving the family in financial ruin. Even in this world, my father cherished me, his only daughter. Despite our dire situation, he refused to sell me off for money, vowing to find another way. But there was no time left. The He family stepped in with an offer, a marriage alliance with their eldest son, Eric. In exchange for saving the Bai family, I calmly accepted. After the failure of my marriage to Oliver, I no longer harbored any illusions about love. Eric needed a wife. I needed the Bai family to survive. It was purely transactional. Eric used the marriage to acquire several mid-sized companies. I didn't care, it was mutual exploitation. This arrangement might have been tolerable if it stayed that way. But of course, Eric had an unforgettable first love, and that wasn't the worst of it. At a banquet, he used me as a shield to deflect drinks. One of the glasses I drank had something spiked in it. The outcome was predictable. He watched my humiliation with cold detachment before finally stepping in. Colin was conceived that night. I could have strangled Eric for it. When I asked Colin, did I ever love him? After losing my memory, I wanted to slap myself for even asking. Love him? Ha! I despised him. If I only disliked him before, what followed made me utterly loathe him. Colin, though unplanned, was still my child. I carried him for 9 months, birthed him, and loved him fiercely. He was the light that brightened my darkest days. But that light didn't last. Colin was kidnapped, and Eric, instead of rescuing him, chose to prioritize picking up his precious unforgettable first love, as if Colin wasn't his biological son. I finally understood why Colin treated his father with such detachment, even disdain. To him, Eric was nothing more than a stranger who happened to share his blood. Hate? Colin had long stopped caring enough to hate. Chapter 14. I couldn't stay any longer. The fury in my chest was about to explode. For the rest of this life, the next, and the one after that, I swear I'll stay far, far away from men. Grinding my teeth almost to dust, I spun on my heel and stormed out of the banquet without looking back. Outside, the cool wind slapped against my face. I wiped my cheeks, only to realize I was crying, tears streaming uncontrollably. But I wasn't crying over lost love or the despair of being used. I was crying because of my terrible luck. What kind of awful people have I been cursed to encounter in my life? Mommy, a soft, childlike voice broke through my thoughts. It was Colin, dressed in a white mini tuxedo, with a budding red rose pinned to his chest. He walked over, standing on tiptoe because he wasn't tall enough. He awkwardly extended a tissue to me with his tiny hand. Mommy, don't cry. You still have me. Colin will always love Mommy. Chapter 15. It took me several days to draft the divorce papers. God help me, one man had already made my blood pressure skyrocket. Adding another one to the mix could send me straight to heaven. I had no desire to step foot into the Ma family home again, so I asked Oliver to meet me elsewhere. With a blank expression, I slid the papers across the table. Oliver, let's get divorced. Oliver looked like he hadn't slept in days. His stubble was unkempt, and his eyes were bloodshot. He didn't even glance at the papers. Instead, in a hoarse voice, he asked, Is Colin his? Do you love him so much that you can't wait to divorce me and run off with Eric? Excuse me? I froze. What? Love who? Eric? What kind of horror movie plot twist was this? I sneered. Forget about Eric for a second, Oliver. What role are you even playing now? The tragic lover? You're the one who promised to love me forever, then cheated first. You're the one who said we'd live our own lives. And now, when I have a child, you're the one questioning me? Mr. Ma, you really know how to flatter yourself. Oliver was stunned, the anger in his eyes slowly fading. In a trembling voice, he said, Jessica, I made Alicia get rid of the baby. That was my fault. But I'll treat Colin like my own son. Can we start over? The tea on the table splashed directly onto his face, setting the cup down calmly. I said, say that again? Looking at his disgusting face, I couldn't help but see Eric's face overlapping with his, the same face that abandoned Colin to chase after his precious unforgettable first love. They were both the same kind of scum. Oliver stayed silent. Sign it, I said coldly. You'll sign it, whether you want to or not, because taking this to court would just be humiliating for everyone. Don't you agree, Oliver? Water dripped down his face as his lashes trembled. There was a fleeting beauty in his broken, defeated expression. The veins on the back of his hand bulged as he clenched the papers tightly, crumpling one corner. You have 3 days, I said, my voice firm. If you don't sign, I'll see you in court. Chapter 16. Humans are such strange creatures. Even when they know they're not wanted, some still insist on coming back for more abuse. Father, my mommy doesn't want to see you, Colin said with a sweet yet biting smile, blocking Eric from stepping inside. Eric frowned slightly. I put the remote control down and walked over to the door. Mommy? Colin looked up at me. Colin, go back to your room, I said, patting his head. Colin hesitated, but in the end, he only said, okay. His small figure disappeared behind the door. The warm smile on my face vanished the moment he was out of sight. Eric looked exhausted, his hair disheveled, but his disheveled state did nothing to diminish his striking features. His deep-set eyes no longer held the cold indifference I remembered from the parallel world. Instead, they brimmed with a chaotic mix of emotions, as if he actually cared about me. I crossed my arms impatiently. Spit it out. I don't have all day. Eric was different from Oliver. I had truly loved Oliver once, which made his betrayal unbearably painful. Eric, on the other hand, had initially earned my gratitude for saving the Bai family. Even when I discovered he had an unforgettable first love, I wasn't particularly hurt. At most, I felt a little uncomfortable. Mostly, I despised him for being the kind of man who pined for someone but didn't dare pursue them, instead settling for another woman. I had no intention of falling for him, much less forgiving him for manipulating me into bed. And when Colin was kidnapped, the hatred I felt for Eric in that moment was almost equal to the pain Oliver had caused. Eric said nothing, finding this utterly pointless. I turned to leave, but he suddenly grabbed my wrist. Should I call you Mrs. Ma? He asked with a self-deprecating laugh. Not for much longer, I said flatly. Honestly, meeting the two of you in this lifetime has been nothing short of catastrophic. He closed his eyes, his voice hoarse. I'm sorry. My smile was sharp, dripping with mockery. If apologies worked, we wouldn't need the police. Then, stepping closer, I lowered my voice into a soft, almost seductive tone. Do you really want my forgiveness? His eyes lit up, and he nodded eagerly. I leaned in and whispered coldly, jump off 1,000 cliffs. If you survive, I'll consider forgiving you. 1,000 cliffs, the very place where Colin's kidnappers had nearly thrown him into the raging sea. None of that amicable breakup nonsense for me. I hold grudges, and I demand payback. Eye for an eye. Turn the other cheek? Hurt myself for others' pity? Not a chance. As my words sank in, his eyes filled with shock and pain. I was unmoved and let go of my hand. Unless you want me to slap you. If my son had to suffer, his so-called father would feel every ounce of that pain too. Chapter 17. Oliver finally agreed to sign the divorce papers. In those 3 days, he desperately tried to play the role of a devoted man, hoping I'd change my mind. I didn't give him the chance. Colin and I spent those days eating, playing, and traveling. Every time Oliver arrived at one of our previous destinations, we had already moved on to the next. When we finally sat down to sign the papers, his fingers trembled slightly as he held the pen, his pale face drawn with exhaustion. He took a deep breath. Jessica, let me ask you one last question. Knowing I'd soon regain my freedom, I graciously allowed it. Go ahead. His eyes swirled with complex emotions as he asked, slowly and deliberately, did you ever love Eric? I raised an eyebrow, genuinely surprised by his obsession with this question. With a soft laugh, I replied, him? Worthy of my love? Still, I am grateful to him, because Colin's arrival made me believe this world isn't all bad. Oliver closed his eyes, a faint flicker of pain passing over his face. The pen moved. From that moment on, Jessica and Oliver became strangers, bound only by the memory of what once was. Chapter 18. I never saw Eric again after that banquet, but I did receive a letter from him, along with a property transfer agreement. I skimmed the letter. It was nothing but meaningless words of regret. Without hesitation, I burned it. As for Oliver, after our divorce, the Ma family quickly found itself besieged by relentless pressure from the Bai family. Father? I asked curiously. Colin chimed in with a bright smile. Mommy, Grandpa's just standing up for you. My father turned his head away with an air of haughty pride. Humph. I told you to divorce him earlier so I could take care of that scumbag properly. He had held back for my sake, afraid I might still have feelings for Oliver. Knowing how deeply I'd loved Oliver for over a decade, he understood it wasn't something I could easily let go. He waited patiently until I was ready to walk away. The Bai family, a century-old powerhouse in the capital, quickly overwhelmed the Ma family, who couldn't even begin to compare. Before long, the Ma family collapsed completely. The last I heard, Oliver and Alicia had moved into a cramped, dirty apartment, constantly arguing over trivial matters. One day, in a fit of rage, Oliver pushed Alicia, causing her to miscarry. Later, an investigation revealed that Oliver's company had been involved in tax evasion, bribery, and embezzlement. The police eventually took him into custody. But what did any of that have to do with me? Bright sunlight bathed the beach, casting a golden glow across the sand. I lay back, sunglasses perched on my nose, soaking up the sun. Next to me, a glass of iced Trash-X lemonade sat, condensation dripping lazily down the sides. I took a deep sip. Bliss, pure bliss. Colin, barefoot and armed with a little shovel, diligently scooped sand into two neat mounds. Before long, two pointed piles emerged, looking suspiciously like tiny graves. Two black lines appeared on my forehead. Sigh. My dear son, surely you're not building these for me, are you? I turned my head, pretending not to notice. But, of course, Colin came running over, beaming with excitement. Mommy, guess who these are for? I twitched a little, bracing myself. That one's Oliver, and the other's Eric, I said, taking a wild shot. After all, it definitely wasn't going to be me. Colin clapped his hands, delighted. Congratulations, Mommy, you guessed right. I tapped his nose, laughing. You little genius. The vast ocean stretched endlessly before us, its shimmering waves glinting under the sunlight. The sea breeze carried away all the troubles of the world, crashing ashore in sparkling sprays of foam. When the darkness fades, the stars shine eternally. Extras. Colin. Father, you shouldn't be here, I said coldly, my eyes devoid of warmth. Mom has already forgotten you, and that's one of the few lucky breaks in her otherwise not-so-lucky life. What? You think you haven't hurt her enough? His demeanor was just as indifferent. He asked, in this world, she didn't marry me? I sneered. You're so confident, aren't you? Still dreaming of claiming another parallel world's version of my mom? But yeah, my mom really hit the jackpot in misfortune, marrying one scumbag only to run into you. Another piece of trash. I didn't resent him for abandoning me to pursue his so-called true love. What I couldn't forgive was how he had broken Mom's heart. Father ignored my mockery and said calmly, Colin, you must know, this world's Jessica didn't give birth to you. Sooner or later, you'll return to your original world. My expression faltered slightly. Yes, When Mom returned to her world, the mom in my world was left behind, a soulless shell. I didn't know why my world's mom hadn't come back. Ending up in this parallel world was a complete accident. But the moment I saw her, I recognized the woman who had given birth to me, cared for me, and loved me. The thought of returning to a world without her filled me with a growing dread. I didn't want to leave. I couldn't accept being just a fleeting presence in Mom's life. But I also knew, deep down, that I couldn't change anything. I was just a 5-year-old. Just as I had inexplicably arrived in her world, I might inexplicably be sent back. If that was the case, then instead of wallowing in despair, I decided to cherish every moment with Mom. Crossing my arms, I said, "So what? Mom will only ever love me. You and Oliver are just stepping stones in her life. Once she gets past you two, neither of you will leave so much as a scratch on her heart." For the first time, Father's calm demeanor cracked. He was angry, but he didn't dare touch me. When I found out Mom had told Father to jump off 1,000 cliffs, my brow twitched, because I genuinely believed he might do it. Mom and Father's story wasn't much different from your run-of-the-mill "I don't like you. I love my unforgettable first love. I humiliated you because you took her place. But after losing you, I realized I'd fallen deeply in love with you." Yeah, classic melodramatic nonsense. After that, I never saw my father again. Still, would he really die so easily? I had my doubts. One day, I received a letter. "To my son, Colin, by the time you receive this letter, the passage between parallel worlds will have closed. You will remain in this world, by your mother's side, forever. I hope that you and your mother will both take care of yourselves." It was signed simply, without emotion,